Good afternoon, everyone. In this video, we'll be talking about sequence models. Okay, so we'll be discussing about scenarios and then like sequence diagrams. Okay, so these are the two things like we'll be discussing as part of this video. Actually, we have discussed about the use case models. Okay, so we have seen like what are use cases. Okay, so how they can be drawn, and then like what are use case diagrams. The sequence model actually elaborates the themes of use cases. Okay, so that means like it describes these use cases better. Okay, so there are two kinds of sequence models. One is the scenarios, the other one is the sequence diagrams. A scenario is a sequence of events that occurs during one particular execution of a system. Okay, uh, more or less like within a use case. Okay, so it is the sequence of events that occur during one particular execution of a system. Okay, a scenario can be a historical record of executing an actual system or a thought experiment of executing a proposed system. So it can be like you are studying an existing system or like you're actually planning for building a system. Okay, so a scenario can be both. Okay, usually a scenario is displayed as a list of text statements. Okay, so let me give you an example that actually will make the things clear for you. Here is a scenario. Okay, so there is an actor. Okay, so here in this case like the customer, or like say for example in this example like John Doe. Okay, so this scenario is about a session with an online stockbroker system. Okay, the online stockbroker system is there, and then like this guy is trying to interact. Okay, so what he is trying to do, like let us try to see it. So that means like using this scenario we are giving a detailed description about a particular use case. Okay, first John Doe. Okay, so basically like the John basically logs into the system. Okay, then the system actually establishes a secure communication with the customer. Okay, in this case with this user, with this actor. Okay, system displays the portfolio information for this particular user. Then this user John Doe, okay, enters a buy order of 100 shares of General Electric GE at the market price. Okay, the system verifies whether there are sufficient funds are there for purchase. Okay, then the system displays confirmation screen with estimated cost. Okay, then John Doe basically confirms the purchase. Then the system basically places the order on securities exchange. Okay, the system displays transaction tracking number for the user. Okay, and then like the user basically logs out. Okay, so he logs in, and then like he made all these messages. Okay, all these steps, and then like he is logging out. Then the system is establishing this insecure communication. Okay, so originally he was logged in, then it was a secure communication. Now it is a general communication, insecure communication. Then the actual system displays goodbye screen. Okay, so the task is done. In the meanwhile, like the security exchange actually does all the transactions. Okay, and then like it basically reports the results of the trade. Okay, the user, in this case John Doe, can see the results in the next session, but that is out of the current scenario, whatever we are trying to describe here. Here is a scenario where he is logging in and then like trying to make those purchases, and then like he is logging out. Okay, so this is about a scenario and its description. So usually like these scenarios are described like in this form of text. The scenario actually explains the interaction at a very high level. Okay, so basically like say for example the John logs in into the system actually might require several messages exchange between him and the system. Say for example he is entering a user ID. Okay, so it can be multiple step process. It basically you have to enter a password, and probably you may also have to verify it through your phone number or something. Okay, so there can be multiple steps involved in that one. We are not worried about the implementation details at that particular stage. So at the early stages, like we are expressing the scenarios at the very high level. Okay, that is what is happening here. Okay, so you don't have to show all the messages. Of course, at a later stages, like you have to show exact messages. Okay, between these actors and objects. So in theory, this scenario contains the message between the objects as well as the activities performed by the objects themselves. Okay, so that's what we have been talking about. In this case, like John Doe being a customer, like he is an object. The system is another object. Okay, So here are two objects like which are actually interacting, and then like say for example the stock exchange itself is an object. Okay, so which also has to be communicated with. Okay, each message transfers information from one object to the another. Okay, that's what is happening whenever we are talking about like a particular message is flowing. Like it is actually say for example the system establishes secure communication. Okay, so the way like we have already seen the example, John Doe logs in means like user ID, password, okay, and the special security information, they are all exchanged. Okay, so the message means like there is certain information is being exchanged between this object, okay, and with the other objects. This is how you actually define scenarios. Okay, so in text. But then like a text format is convenient for writing. However, it does not show the sender and the receiver of each message. See, we were discussing the thing and then like and we were trying to look at each and every sentence. Okay, so more or less like this text. Okay, we are trying to see like where the invocation is happening and which of the objects are actually participating. So it is not always obvious. Okay, especially if there are more than two objects, it would become pretty difficult for you to figure out like which of the objects are actually communicating here. Okay, that's about these sort of scenarios, the problem with these scenarios. So to counter that one, there is the sequence diagram. A sequence diagram actually shows the participants in an interaction and the sequence of messages among them. So basically a sequence diagram shows the interaction of a system with its actors to perform all or part of a use case. Okay, I'll show you an example, then it will make the things clear for you. So here is a sequence diagram, okay, for the same session with this online stockbroker, which we have discussed in terms of scenarios. Okay, so here is the sequence diagram for that. There are several objects participating in this one. Okay, so the customer object is there. So in the earlier example, in the scenario we have seen like the joined OI. Okay, so who was actually a customer here. So that's an actor. Okay, so then so basically that's one of the objects. Okay, and the stockbroker is another object, stockbroker system is another object, and then like the securities exchange, which is outside the system, which is another actor for you. Okay, especially in terms of the use cases are concerned. Okay, so this is again another actor, securities exchange. Okay, so basically like that's also as part of this sequence diagram. And then like this line, okay, so this vertical line, okay, so with each and every object, this is called the lifeline. Okay, so basically like the time is actually going down, so but that means like as the messages, so these are the messages which are being exchanged between these objects. So the customer basically will send login information, okay, login with this sort of stockbroker system. Okay, so he has to send all the information like the user ID, password, etc. Okay, then basically the stockbroker system is actually verifying the customer. Okay, and then like it is actually establishing this secure communication. So basically like these messages are exchanged in this particular order. So basically like as time flows, the messages are basically going down in this order, and then like these messages are exchanged between these objects as I have already discussed. So once this sort of secure communication is established, okay, so the stockbroker system has established the secure communication, it can actually display the portfolio for him, for the customer. Then basically the customer will enter the purchase data. So the stockbroker system has to verify whether he has enough money for purchasing so those many things. And then like it basically sends a message like request confirmation. So that means like he can actually purchase it. Okay. And then like the customer is sending another message like confirms the purchase. Okay. So you can purchase that one. And then like the stockbroker system is actually placing the order into this sort of securities exchange. Okay, so which also acts as an actor here in this case. Okay, and then like it also displays this sort of order number. So here is some sort of concurrent messages are happening. Okay, so the stockbroker system is sending one message to a customer and it is placing another message to this sort of security section. Okay, so here are concurrent messages going around. And then like of course once this order number is seen, basically the customer is logging out. Okay, so he sent the log out message to this one. So with that one, like basically the stockbroker terminates that particular session, and then like it starts an insecure communication. Okay, and it also displays goodbye. That's it. So with this one, like basically the activity has finished for this sort of customer. So in this sequence, in parallel, like say for example, since you have placed the order at this sort of securities exchange, it is basically executing the order, and then like it basically report results of the trade to this sort of stock broker system. As we have discussed in the scenarios as well, like this is what actually finishes this particular session with this sort of online broker. The basically like the customer, once he logs in again next time, okay, once he is seeing his play or portfolio display portfolio is actually done, okay, in the next login. So basically he will be seeing the results of the previous execution. Okay, this is what you can actually see as part of this sort of sequence diagram. Okay, so once again, like here are the objects, okay, so here are the actors, okay, so and then like this is the lifeline until when the object is actually alive, okay, objects are alive, and then like here are the messages which are happening, and then like the messages actually happen in a sequential order. That is why it's a sequence diagram, and the time actually is basically goes down. Okay, so that's about it. And then like we also have discussed about this sort of concurrent messages happening, message exchange happening there. Each use case requires one or more sequence diagram to describe its behavior. Okay. Um, so how I will give you the examples. Okay. Each sequence diagram actually shows a particular behavior sequence of that use case. One sequence diagram for each major flow of the control. Okay. So in the earlier sequence diagram example which I have given, like it is a really a big task. Okay. So we try to put everything into one sequence diagram. But usually like each sequence diagram shows a particular behavior sequence of the use case, okay, and one sequence diagram for each major flow. So more or less for each task, like you will have a sequence diagram. So for example, like the sequence diagram which we have seen earlier, okay, can be split into several sequence diagrams. Let's look at the examples. So here is a sequence diagram for a stock purchase application, okay, for a stock purchase, okay, this is a use case, or like a particular task within a use case. So again, we have the same objects. So the customer is there, the stock broker system is there, security exchange is there. Okay. So he need to make the purchase. So here we have removed all that login and then like making the secure communication and everything. So that is put in another sequence diagram. So for purely this sort of stock purchase, okay, so we have this sort of sequence diagram. What we have done is, okay, so what the sequence diagram basically shows is the customer basically enters purchase data, whatever he wants to purchase. Say for example, he can put like G shares like he wants to buy. Say for example, he wants to buy 100 shares. Okay, and then like the stock broker system, okay, basically verifies the funds whether he has enough funds or not, which we have earlier included into one particular single sequence diagram. But then like this is purely for this sort of stock purchase. Then it basically verifies the funds, and then like you basically have to request for the confirmation. Okay, and then like the customer basically sends the confirmation. Okay, so he confirms the purchase. Then again, like we have seen the concurrent messages happening there, the stockbroker system basically places the order here, and also it displays the order number for the customer. Okay, and then like we have seen like the securities exchange in parallel is actually doing this execution the order, and then like it will actually report results of the trade to this sort of stockbroker system. Okay, this is a sequence diagram for a stock purchase, but you don't have to purchase always. I mean, like you can have another sequence diagram for stock quotations. Okay, so before you want to purchase, like you want to see like how much a particular share costs for you. Then again, for that one, you can draw another sequence diagram here. So the same objects participating, because like it is for the same use case. So the stockbroker system is okay one use case, and then like here we have several sequence diagrams for that particular use case. So in this case, like the customer is actually entering the stock symbol, whatever the stock he wants to purchase. The stockbroker will basically ask the securities exchange request the stock data. So that one basically will report the stock data to you, and the stockbroker system is actually displaying the quotation. And once basically like the customer is okay with the quotation of that particular stock, he can actually go back to this sequence diagram, and then like he can actually make a purchase. Okay, so within a particular use case, okay, several subtasks can be there, and each and every subtask like you will be showing with one sequence diagram. Okay, and that's what we are talking here. Okay, each sequence diagram shows a particular behavior sequence of a use case, and each use case requires one or more sequence diagrams to describe its behavior. Okay, so that's about this sequence diagrams. We should also prepare a sequence diagram for each exception conditions within the use case. While seeing the use case descriptions, we have seen like use cases will have certain message exchanges, and they will also have these sort of abnormal conditions. Okay, so exceptional conditions we have seen while discussing the use cases. Okay, say for example, you are trying to purchase the stocks. You don't have to succeed always. Sometimes it may fail. Why it will fail? Let us see this particular sequence diagram. The customer is there. This time he is actually trying to make a purchase, and he has entered the purchase data. And the stockbroker system actually tried to verify the funds, and it actually has identified like he don't have enough funds. He don't have sufficient funds to basically buy these stocks. Okay, so then basically like the stockbroker system can actually reject the purchase. Okay, this is a message which is sent to the customer, and the customer can basically cancel the purchase because he don't have enough money for that one. This is another sequence diagram, okay, for the same stock purchase use case, okay. But this is an exception condition where like you don't have enough funds, and then like this stock purchase is failing here. Okay, this is a stock. This is a sequence diagram for that one. Okay, so with the same objects, how the messages are actually being exchanged. Okay, but this particular case is actually shown in this sequence diagram. Okay, so we have seen enough sequence diagram examples. Let us look at some more advanced concepts of the sequence diagrams actually. Okay, so earlier in the sequence diagram you have seen like all the objects are already created. Okay, and then like during the lifeline like you are actually trying to exchange the message between them. Okay, it don't have to happen always like this one. You can create your own objects. Okay, so during this sort of sequence diagram, and objects can also be killed. Okay, so they can also be destroyed. So let's see with this particular example. Okay, so basically whenever a sequence diagram actually starts, it actually starts with this sort of found message. So the first message which actually triggers this sort of sequence. Okay, so this is a little bit advanced sequence diagram. So the found message is the one, okay, so with which like the sequence diagram actually starts. In this case, like say for example, there is a system, okay, so you are actually trying to query for a database. Okay, you are querying a database. So there is a handler for that one. The handler has this sort of lifeline, okay, so which is basically going down. Okay, so as we have discussed, the time is basically going down. So whenever a query basically comes, okay, to this sort of handler, what it can do is like it can create a new object using a message, and here it is basically creating an object, a query comment. See this one. In this case, okay, so originally in the previous example, we have seen like all the objects are created and then like they are horizontally at the same level. But in this sequence diagram, since a new object is actually created, when it actually receives this query database message, and as part of that one, like it is actually creating this new using this new method, okay, new message, okay. So basically like a query command object is actually created. Once the query command object is created, it in turn is creating another object, a database statement object it is creating, again with this new message. Okay, so new will actually create that particular object. So if you look in terms of the timeline, say for example, this object is created, and then like this object is created with this new. Okay, once this object is created, the query command is actually trying to execute the particular query, whatever it has received. So this is the message like which it has sent to this sort of database statement. The database statement will basically execute it, and it will basically send you the results. Okay, so the query command basically receives the results. Then basically like it can actually extract all the results. This is a message to its own object. So the object is actually sending the message to itself, self message. Okay, so it will actually try to extract the results. Once it has actually extracted the results, it can actually send this sort of close message to this database statement object that will actually destroy the object. Okay, so the object is actually being deleted here. Of course, like if you really go in terms of the languages are concerned, say for example Java, like the object is not immediately deleted. Okay, so it is up to the garbage collection to basically eventually do that one. But then like the object's life cycle has actually finished and it is ready for garbage collection. So the object is actually deleted here. Okay, so with this sort of close message, once it actually receives, the database statement object basically closes itself. So now you have already the results, and then like you close the database statement. Okay, then you will basically send the results to this handler. Okay, so basically the results are actually stamped, and then like the query command, basically also this object stops, more or less, like it also gets deleted. Okay, whereas like say for example this handler lifeline, it don't have to immediately terminate. It can basically, its lifeline can just extend, so that means like the object is still alive. Okay, it is in the activation state for that particular message. Of course, like the activation state actually finishes here, because like for that particular query in the database, so it has done all these activities, all these sequence of messages in the sequence diagram, and you basically got the results. Okay, hope that is clear. Why this a handler is not killed here is basically it can receive the next query, so you don't have to kill this object, so it can receive another found message and it can actually start executing from here. Okay, or like the sequence diagram basically can initiate from the beginning again. Okay, these are about a little bit more features with this advanced sequence diagrams. So we have seen these scenarios and then like sequence diagrams. Okay, so how to draw a sequence diagram and how they basically elaborate use cases. Okay, we have seen that. Now let us look at the guidelines for these sequence models. Okay, once you have designed this sort of use cases and the use case diagrams, prepare at least one scenario per use case. Okay, scenario, the text based description scenario. Okay, you prepare at least one scenario per each use case, and then like abstract the scenarios into this sort of sequence diagrams. Okay, with this sort of sequence diagram very clearly show what are the contributions of each and every actor. Okay, so how they are actually exchanging messages with the system and the other objects within the system. Okay, and also like how the actors are also like exchanging messages, or like the system is actually exchanging the messages with these actors. So with the sequence diagram very clearly show the contribution of each and every actor. Okay, and also like divide complex interactions into several sequence diagrams, the way like I have actually shown you. Okay, so have multiple sequence diagrams, okay, to basically to show complex interactions. Okay, but then like how many sequence diagrams you will have. Okay, again it's up to the modeler. Okay, so who is actually designing the system to the level like he can actually understand the system better. Okay, so for example like for all the major activities, for all the major sequences, like have the sequence diagrams, and also prepare sequence diagrams for each and every error conditions or like abnormal conditions. Okay, so also don't forget to prepare sequence diagrams for them as well. These are very important in understanding the system. Okay, in understanding the use case and its task clearly. So that's about these sequence models. Okay, so as far as the reference are concerned, so now we are again in chapter 7, okay, of this object oriented modeling and design with UML. Thank you very much for your attention.